And we are back with another episode of the Top Three Show, where I talk to some of my favorite artists about their favorite artists. And man, where to even begin with this guy? I mean, just musically would take me forever just to introduce him. But I've watched him grow from the Inveritus days through 10th Row to now a band called Love. And he's just an amazing guitarist, singer, songwriter, producer. The man has many names. I call him many different things between son, the kid, bro, bear fringer, Reese's father. I could go on and on. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Ian Joshua Riley, welcome to the show, man.
I'm excited to be here. Like to actually, I think is this the second or third time I've been on a podcast of yours? I can't remember. I feel like it's the second technically, right?
This is yeah, I think technically the second. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
On
I'm very
whatever
excited.
my other show was, I can't even remember.
I think it was Heart of an Artist that I was on.
That's right. Yeah. Heart of an artist, man.
Yeah. But
Crazy.
I knew that me saying happy to be here talking to you, I was like, this has happened before, and not in the Brooks way. Um,
I I just saw you. But yeah, yeah. This is gonna be great, man, because I know it's gonna be hard to not go a long time on this episode, but for
I
sure
will try to keep myself reeled in, but as the host, you also obviously have permission to keep me reeled in because
I will attempt that, but also, I just love talking music with you, so we can go as long as it takes. But are you ready to be more fully known to the universe today?
as ready as I'll ever be.
Let's do this, man. So we're gonna start with the very first question, which is your top three favorite albums of all time, starting with number three.
All right. So this was as everyone you ever interview is going to say this, but this was you know me, you know my musical history. This was very difficult for me to narrow down. But I'm gonna jump right into it and not give too much context, and I'll start talking about the album to give context. My number three is A Thousand Suns by Linkin Park.
Ah, nice, man.
I have a lot of special fond memories with this record. Normally, we can talk about. There's a lot of this list is contextualized by our relationship. And one of my favorite things about this was, you know, the story, but for the listeners, this album or this single, The Catalyst, came out while I was on a missionary trip against my will in July
That's right.
2010. And this was when you were dating my mom at the time. Y'all weren't even married yet.
Hmm.
And I remember we had talked music, we talked about Deftones. I like told you what my friends do, what I do. I was literally 17. I was about to be a senior in high school. I've been a lifelong Linkin Park fan forever. They were my first favorite band, and I've watched the evolution of their band like pretty much since the beginning. I mean, like before I really even cared about music, I was listening to like Hybrid Theory and Meteora because of my friend, who we still keep in touch, but my old elementary school friend Ronnie Wozniak. So shout out Ronnie. He got me into my first band, which was them, really.
Yeah.
And so from Hybrid Theory to Meteora to Minutes to Midnight to A Thousand Suns, I think one other person shares this take with me, and that's Carson Pace from the Callous Cowboys. But this is the only band where I could say, generally speaking, their first four albums are like a perfect four-way tie for me. I think those four records are incredible. I think their whole discography is damn near perfect. But A Thousand Suns, I would call their magnum opus. Carson also shares that with me, and we'll get into this later. But I was fortunate enough to see them on that tour for that record, which was the only time I ever got to see them with you.
Yep.
Um, what that record did for me compared to the other three, because the first two they produced themselves and with Don Gilmore, and the third one, Minutes to Midnight, was their first foray into kind of like broadening their sound with Rick Rubin, which they were never a conventional rock band, and that's Mike Shinoda's own words.
Right.
But uh, they I feel like they became the band that they set out to be almost unknowingly on this. There's a preface in that album's liner notes that says we were not trying to make an album, and that's how it starts. And yet they made, I think, I would argue it's one of the most cohesive and most brilliantly put together pieces of like sonic art of the 21st century. That record and everything it means, like what the songs are about, what the loose concept is, the loose narrative is, the way it starts, the way it flows, the way it ends. I think it's a perfect record. It changed the way I think about music forever. Like, in a way, which was crazy because I'd had such a musical journey in my adolescence from when I started listening to them all
Yeah.
the way when that record came out right before I turned 18. And it really set me, I think, on the path that I'm on now, even more than I already was. Like, it kind of like put me going toward. I would say that that record, especially songs like Iridescent and The Catalyst, are almost single-handedly responsible for the subliminal impact on my writing in like A Band Called Love and stuff like that. You know what I mean?
Oh,
Like
absolutely. Yeah.
and I know you love that record too. Is that your
Oh, it
yeah,
is my favorite Linkin Park album for
yeah,
sure. Yeah,
yeah,
by far, actually. I mean, I know you said all those other albums, which are all great, but
yeah,
yeah, I feel like they took it to another level. And I'll never forget when you showed me the Catalyst, actually, like as
yep.
soon as it came out, and I was like,
Yeah.
man, these guys are really like
There's something
stretching
else. Yeah.
themselves.
They're
Yeah,
not just some new metal band. And even on Minutes to Midnight,
yeah,
they proved that they were way more than just that because Rick Rubin kind of expanded their sound to like almost to like U2 territory. Because that
yeah,
wasn't long after How to Dismantle an Atomic Bomb. And like some of the texture and like some of the production of that you can kind of feel on or the influence of stuff like that
yeah.
on some of the more rock songs on Minutes to Midnight. But A Thousand
Hmm.
Suns was just like it was
Yeah.
everything I think they set out to do, magnified and fully realized. And after that, it was just coast.
Yeah. And as much as I love all the singles too on that album, like there's so many gems like When They Come For Me, which was so great live at that show, how it
Yeah,
started, like the lighting was amazing. And then Robot Boy like gets stuck in
yeah,
my head like once a week to this
yeah.
day. So I mean,
Blackout. Blackout to
yeah,
me,
oh
I think
yeah.
one of the most brilliant uses of like dance
Hmm.
sensibilities with like mostly
Yeah.
screaming and like what it's about too.
Yeah.
Um, The Messenger, I think The Messenger might be my favorite. Next to The Catalyst, it might be my favorite song by them. That song
Yeah.
to this day, I mean, dude, the day Chester took his life and that it was announced to the world, I listened to that song like in my car. I was working
Mm.
with Kelsey. We worked in the same office, like down the road from here. And I
Yeah.
remember when I found out, I just listened and we got back home to the apartment I was living in Swanee, dude, and I just like wept. Like, I mean, like
Yeah.
that song, and that song already made me feel that way. I was amazed and so thankful they played it at that show we saw them at. It was just like
Yeah. Yeah.
he sounds perfect on it, man. Like it's
Oh
just
yeah, his voice really I was blown away by how perfect his vocals were live. I couldn't believe it
he's
because
one of the most passionate performers I've ever seen. Him and Mike together,
yeah,
like him and Mike together is what I aspire. I'm not a rapper, but just in terms of like the producer, guitar player, like vision person in the band, like creative director.
yeah,
Him and Mike is what I aspire Ryan and I to be at some
yeah.
point.
Oh yeah, yeah. And you guys are certainly getting there, man. But before we move on to the next one, I just did have to mention Waiting for the End is that song for me that gets me emotional like
Mm,
anytime I hear it. So
dude, yeah. That one was one of the first ones that because of you got her to listen to. That was one of the first ones I think my mom knew by name. Like my mom knew
mm,
I liked Linkin Park, and I think she liked some of the songs I showed her from like
yeah,
Minutes to Midnight. I'd shown her when I bought Minutes to Midnight the night it came out, like right like in my eighth grade. Like this was like the same toward the end of my eighth grade year, right around the time me and Kelsey started dating technically, which is really funny.
yeah, yeah.
I was like like freshly 14 years old when that record came out. And I showed my mom songs like Hands Held High, and I was like, the song is like about like the political climate and everything right now. Which in 2007, this was like the height of like the Iraq war and stuff like that. And then The Little Things Give You Away was like about Hurricane Katrina. And my mom, I remember
Mm,
those songs like moved her because I like explained what they were about because I was
right.
reading it in the liner notes, and that's what I would always do. And we'll talk more about that with the other records too. But like that when she heard Waiting for the End, and then also I remember they played it when we all used to attend 12 Stone Church in Gwinnett County.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
Played it that one time as it's part of their, and I was like, so I mean, for all three of us, it was really cool. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Much
Who
like
was it? Dustin that sang that? I don't remember.
I think so, maybe. Like I don't know. I just remember
Yeah.
thinking like this is really cool that they're doing this song here and why they're doing it,
No,
and
it was
they
Rudy
tied it.
Vaughn, I think,
It
sang
was
that.
Rudy, I
Yeah,
think.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
one of
Shout
those
out.
guys, one of the guys from the wedding band.
Yeah.
uh, Shout out A Town A List.
Yeah, yeah, for
I don't know
real.
if any of them are listening to this, but it'd be cool if they do. Uh,
Yeah.
but yeah, yeah. No, did you have anything else you wanted to say about that one? I know you have a lot to say about
No, no, yeah, but yeah, because we do have to move on for sure. But yeah, man, what a choice. I'm very happy with this already. So what is your number two?
All right, my number two, and this one was really hard to relegate to second place because it is literally tattooed on my arm. But I would, and this one's technically two albums, but I'm lumping it together as one cohesive body
Yeah,
of. It was released part one and two released in '07, part two and three released in '08, but they were recorded together, produced together. They're one body of work. It's the Alchemy Index by Thrice.
nice.
What that album is to me, I could run my mouth about my origins in music and how like indie rock and post-hardcore and like all of this stuff and the weird um I like that I like when Cameron Crowe in Pearl Jam 20, he's like narrating and he's saying the thing about how like this was music from guys that stayed indoors a lot. They had a lot of time playing, had a lot of time listening, and they listened to everything. And he names like genre and subgenre after genre and
Yeah,
stuff. And then he says all of it Cuisinarted together into this majestic mix of great melodic hard rock. That's what
yeah,
Thrice was to me. He was
yeah.
talking kind of the predecessors to that in the alt world, but Thrice was this skate punk band that got big because of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater because they were on like Sub City Records, and
Hmm.
then they got a deal with Island when Island was in that boom in like '03, signing whoever, like they got them Thursday, then Fallout Boy, and just trying to get the emo post-hardcore bands while they still could, while the getting was good. No one expected them to take this like kind of like pseudo Christian curve into like being an experimental rock band. Then they made Visu their fourth record, their second on Island Records, and the last time they were on a major, they went to I don't remember the guy's name. Steve Osborne, I think, is the producer they went to in the UK to make that
Hmm.
record. And everyone loved Visu. Image of the Invisible was like this big anthem, and it was on Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. But that they already at that point weren't the band anymore that had people had known them for. So they got off of Major. They went to Vagrant Records, and they were just like, let's make our own studio. Let's do what we did on Visu, where we explore all these sounds, but let's make it really high concept. And of course, this is prior to Beggars, because Beggars was them kind of coming out of what Dustin Kenzer called the head game that was the Alchemy Index. But
Yeah,
the Alchemy Index, I think, is just it's every thing I love about music split apart on display, genre-wise and lyrically, conceptually.
yeah,
And and it's framed through the elements of fire, water, air, and earth. It's six songs a piece for each one. So technically, you can think of it as like four EPs of six songs,
right.
or two LPs of 12 songs is how they were sold. Um, but what's cool about them is you can see that the lyricism is all framing devices for explaining ostensibly humanity's like relationship with the four classical elements, and it's
Hmm.
using those that imagery. Fire's super heavy. It's like heavy music but with like Fender guitars because they had gotten really into Telecasters at that point. And then water's very electronic, almost very post rock at times, very like kind of like trance but like smooth and ambient. And
Right.
then air is very like still kind of ambient but more indie rock with like Verb, and the Earth record is very folky.
Yeah.
And what's cool about it is each one of them ends with a song that's written in iambic pentameter, which is like a sonnet.
Hmm.
So, and each one's written from the perspective of every element. And again, it's ostensibly the element speaking to humanity and lamenting its relationship, how it's lost its relationship with humanity. And you
Right.
can tell that the reading between the lines thing, if you replace the imagery of the element itself with God, it's like God lamenting like the way he's like lost his relationship with humanity. And
Yeah.
it's like I'm not gonna get too into faith and stuff on this thing, but like before I was truly like a believer in like Jesus, that record like destroyed me. I wanted this tattoo when I didn't believe in God. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And
Yeah.
this the quote here is from the Messenger, which is it's "Here I am," as paraphrasing "Here am I," which is also from Isaiah 6:8,
Yeah.
and that's what that whole song is about. But yeah, no, the Alchemy Index, it like warped my brain. Like I was like, I didn't know, I knew what they did on Visu, and I was like, I want to be in a band like that. But they really like blew it all out there, where it's like everything you could say, everything from In Veritas when I was doing kind of like heavier Fender guitar, like post rock with vocals type thing, all the way to what I do now is all still influenced by the touch of like what that collection
Hmm.
of music did to me. And
Yeah.
if you've never listened to it and you've just set aside 2 hours and open the book that comes with it and just read and listen to the Alchemy Index, it's an experience unlike anything you'll ever
Yeah.
listen to. I
Dude,
think
amazing album. Yeah, and great choice. I I didn't know quite what to expect, but it makes perfect sense that this is high up there for you, obviously. But you got me into them with this album. Specifically, I think it was Digital Sea that I got into, and definitely the Water album is the one that I tend to revisit the most. I just think that whole thing is perfect. Like even Night Diving is such a cool
Yeah.
instrumental,
Mhm.
which is great for night driving, by the way.
Yeah, I know. I
And
think about that a lot too.
yeah, and then I don't know, man. Like there's stuff to love on all of them though. Like Earth, I love as well, of course. Come all
All
you
you
weary.
weary. Yeah.
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 And was so cool when we got to see them on the I guess that was the
The
first
major
time
minor
the
chord.
Major Minor tour. Yeah.
I
This will
just
now be our fifth time or my fifth time seeing them. I don't even know how many times you've seen them at
I
this
think I've
point.
seen them like 15 times at this point. Yeah.
I've just been wanting to see them play the song Beggars, and now I finally will definitely see them do that since they're playing that front to back at the
Yeah.
stuffing. So when I guess I think when this episode airs, it might be the day of. So yeah, I'm excited about that. But yeah, man, amazing album, and thank
Yeah.
you for getting me into
Shout
them.
out Thrice too, also from where I'm from, Irvine, California. There aren't many people or artists that are from there. I think it's like the two that I can think of that come to mind are like Thrice and then the trap artist Yeet and
Y-
then me. Like
Yeah,
I'm sure there's
yeah.
more. Those are the ones
Uh,
I know.
I'm
So
sure, yeah, but yeah, they're truly one of my favorite bands now. I mean,
they,
Dustin Kensrue is a genius.
he's one of my favorite living songwriters.
Yeah.
Probably like up in my top five. We That's a whole thing for another time we should do. His favorite
Yeah.
living songwriters.
Yeah, yeah, for
Favorite
sure.
songwriters of all time. But anyway, go on. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, cool. Well, great pick for number two. So what is your number one?
I'm gonna get this out of the way now. It's taboo in a lot of alternative circles to even discuss this band, and I understand why, and I acknowledge why.
Hmm.
Um, that has honestly kind of like barred them from entering some of my other lists for this, just because I don't want to talk too much about them. But I would be lying to myself, and I want to talk about this record if I did not talk about this record. My favorite album of all time is "The Devil and God Are Raging Inside Me" by Brand New.
I
Um,
knew it.
I think it's a perfect record. It was stitched together as such. It was not meant to be what it was. It was leaked before it came out, like the demos, which only two of those songs made it to the final cut, which was Sowing Season and Luca, and they were just demos.
Yeah.
Nick Sapone's work with that band and what that producer and what that band did, I think that record embodies everything I love, not just about guitar music, because I love guitar music. It's where I started, it's a lot of what I have done and still do. But record experiences as I've gotten older, and I think you relate to this a lot with like Radiohead and artists like that. They tend to be less about the band element and more about the universe that the record is, like what it
Mm.
becomes with sound and with songwriting and like how it feels. You hear all the weird production elements and all the stuff that kind of puts you in a different place. The Devil and God Are Raging Inside Me is arguably the record that saved my life when I was a teenager. I heard it for the first time. It came out in 2006, so I think I heard it right after that, so like '07-ish. I was 14 the first time I heard it.
Hmm.
Um, and it was their debut. It was their third record, but it was their debut on Interscope when they were on a major. And they had no music videos for it. They didn't do singles like that. They had like singles for the record, but they didn't like, they didn't do a lot of, they kind of became recluses because at
Yeah.
that point, up to that, then they had been like emo poster children of like the alt press world of like 2003 and 4, the way that in the throne that like Fall Out Boy, Paramore, Panic at the Disco,
Yeah.
every Fueled by Ramen band, basically, like you name it, the throne that those bands went on to get, Brand New basically refused it. And when they released this record, there were like Rolling Stone articles that were like, America finally has its own Radiohead, where it was basically this
Hmm.
band chose this route of writing these introspective, really meaningful songs about the world around them. And also, they had like a lot of, I think it's like 16 or something people that were close to them, all family and friends that died between the start and the completion of the record. So, like, from the summer of like
Mm.
05 to '06, while they were like holed up in New York making it with their friend. And dude, just like from start to finish, every single track, like, and I know everyone who knows like these songs can even like not even talking about the B sides, like the leaked demos, like Untitled 5, Nobody Moves, or like Fork and Knife, all the stuff that people can point to and be like, those are like some of their best songs, and I agree. But
Yeah.
just the pre-gap audio, Sowing Season, Milestone, Jesus, DeGausser, Limousine, like everything going all the way to especially like, Luca, the
Yeah.
Archer was a broken, which I would say it's not gonna be on this list, but at one point I called it my favorite song of all time, and then Handcuffs and the way it ends.
Yeah.
I think that record is like Damn by Kendrick Lamar in hip hop, like even some records by the Beatles. I think that record is the light and darkness of humanity captured in a moment by young people and distilled to audio.
Yeah.
I think that that's a perfect record. I don't think there's nothing that can touch it songwriting wise to me. And I'm not saying that it's like the best songwriting of all time. I'm saying there's nothing like it at
Yeah.
all. I don't even think they could top it. In science fiction, the last record they did came dangerously close to being on par with that for me.
They
Even
have a
Daisy,
lot of great albums. Yeah, Daisy is technically my favorite, but I can
amazing record. That's like full send on the
yeah.
darkness of Devil and God.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. But yeah, I mean, just Jesus Christ alone, man, is one of the greatest songs of all time. I mean, I remember when you played that for me the first time, and I was just
Yeah.
completely lost in it. I
Mhm.
love that. Yeah, we've also seen them live one time
That's
together.
the very first time I saw them live. The first
We
of 7 times I saw them live.
Yeah, so this is gonna be awesome, man. Like we've experienced almost everything on this list. So I can't wait to see when we get to the actual
I know that
concert experiences.
that particular show I'll never forget, just like without talking about it and make sneaking it onto my list because that's not what I'm trying to do. But like that show,
Yeah,
with you, like it was like living out, especially in the Tabernacle, like what I heard on record. There were a few
yeah,
bands that really did that for me, especially in the Tabernacle. It's the best place to do it. But them
right.
there, I was
Yeah,
like, this is one of the few times I feel like I'm experiencing the world of these records, like in
right.
not just a band playing, like
Yeah,
it was amazing. Like that life-changing band for me. They
yeah.
always will be. Um, I have peace about them, but I'm
Hmm.
like I would be remiss to not mention that that record is deeply influential on me, changed my life
Yeah,
forever, me and many other people.
I get it, man. Totally. So before we move on to the next one, did you have an honorable mention to throw out there or
Yeah, and again, so this was my rule. I kind of did what Blake did, except I made it a little bit more stringent. Like
okay?
I have three per list, but I'm not going to make it a
You're
top six.
you're just
So
gonna like rattle them off, I
yeah,
guess, or
yeah.
okay.
It
I'll
was
allow it.
so hard to not like put Adjy Idol Opus, but like I was like, no, I have to actually like because like I'll talk about
Yeah.
that later, different part of the list.
Okay.
But rattle them off because people are gonna. I'm putting them on the honorable mentions list because for me as a musician, there are
Mhm.
people who would watch this video and be like, "This is sinful." That if you know these records, that they're not in your, but to me, because they are that important.
Yeah.
So I know I'm gonna get some flack that these aren't in my top three, but it's just
Yeah.
those other three are that important to me.
Sure.
Okay, computer. I credit you with this record. It's back there on your wall.
Yeah.
Rainbows is a perfect counterpart to it, but OK Computer is the Radiohead record for me.
Yeah.
I literally will always say it ruined my life. It almost
Me
made me.
too.
I think it's one. I think it's the greatest record made by a band in the '90s. I think it's a perfect record by a band, not by rock, not by experimental, just the perfect band record of that time.
Yeah.
And then it's funny. So the honorable mentions is all three of them, I think, made the best record by a band in their respective decade.
Okay.
My second one is The Rush of Blood to the Head by Coldplay.
Nice.
Also on your wall. The third one is
Yes.
not A Rush of Blood to the Head. That changed my life forever. I've never heard a record like it, never will since. It made Coldplay one of my favorite bands of all time. Easily like changed how I look at songwriting and music. Um,
Yes.
I think it is the best record. And again, people, this is my opinion. This is my list. So like, so if people want to say I'm wrong, that's fine. I
Yeah.
think it's the best record by a band, just by a band of the 2000s.
Yeah.
It is the one I would call that.
I
Number
agree.
three of that honorable mentions is A Brief Inquiry into Online Relationships by the 1975. I think it's the best record
Okay.
by a band of the 2010s. It is the OK Computer of its time. It is unprecedented. It is every amazing, Blake already said it all for me, but it is every amazing, beautiful, like just array of production and songwriting choices that I wish I made, but also that I would make. And I think it captures the tension of young people and culture and all of society and humanity at its height in 2018,
Yeah.
like the 2010s, in such a perfect art, like just this amazing art form that I look back on it and I'm going to be like, that really was what made the 2010s the 80s for my generation. Like that record changed so much, and it remains timeless to me. All three of them do. But yeah,
Okay.
so
All
those are my
right.
honorable mentions. I would be remiss to not mention those records. I
All
do
right.
think,
Fair enough, man. That was very quick. I'm
yeah.
impressed.
Um,
All right. Well, are you ready to move on to the next question, sir?
let's do it. Let's do it.
All right. So, your top three favorite artists of all time, starting with number three.
I'm looking at the timer too, so just to be conscious of that.
Yeah.
Um, okay, number three is Coldplay. Um,
Yeah.
Coldplay to me, and again, I credit you with two of these in a lot of ways. Because I loved both of these bands already, but I really got into them and did the deep dives on them, and then kind of progressed and developed my own relationship with them. But I started a lot of these forays because of you. And I'm very thankful for that.
That's
Coldplay,
cool.
it goes anyone who knows me now or has known me in music in the last like decade or so. The way people used to talk about me in brand new in my late teens, early 20s is how most people these days know me about Coldplay. It's almost a meme. Like it's like literally like on the last podcast I was on, literally Nolan, shout out Nolan and No Landing podcast, he was saying he was like, yeah, Coldplay's like, and that's the meme, right? Like, and I was like,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
guess, yeah, like my reputation precedes me. I could they're my number three because they while not I don't know that I could call them my favorite band of all time. They've been my favorite band at intervals, but I could
Hmm.
nerd out about that band forever. I love every record by them. The newest one I would say is their weakest, but even then,
Hmm.
like they make decisions that I listen to and I'm like, I wish I did this. I literally and
Yeah.
Chris Martin, I mean, dude, I mean, there's one of his records is on that wall behind you for a reason, and we were just talking about it. Like they just as a songwriter the chemistry they have, like Chris, Johnny, Will, Guy. Uh, I mean, I could quote things they've said in the documentaries and the live movies and everything for days, and I would still always find a way to be fascinated with them.
Yeah.
And Called Love is very much its own entity. I don't aspire to be a part two of some other band, but if there was one other band that embodies an archetype of like a lot of like a framework, a proof of concept, it is Coldplay. I think
Yeah.
they did before we did. And I think when we are much bigger, I think they're going to be the type of band that I look at, and at least I can point to them and say, in addition to Radiohead, Linkin Park, and all these other bands,
Yeah.
they are the one that proved to me that what was in my head about visuals, about universe, about facilitating a moment, which I've always said that. And then Chris Martin just said it to Zane Lowe in an interview. And I was like, why does he think these things as I'm thinking them? And also
Yeah.
just Ryan have this very similar duality. When I see Chris Martin sometimes now, I think of our Ryan, not the
Yeah.
reverse all the time, but like it's cool. And
Yeah.
yeah, they are Coldplay. I could talk forever about them, but you know how I feel about them.
Oh
I
yeah.
adore.
And I'm right with you, man. I mean, yeah, I do think there's been like a dip in the quality of their music in the last decade, but still there's always still things to love on
Mhm.
every record. Like Coloratura, I think is one of the best songs they ever made.
Yeah.
And yeah, seeing them
On their
live.
biggest records too. Like I love that
Yeah.
record, but like objectively,
Yeah.
they just snuck in the longest song they've ever written and one of the
Right.
coolest and most badass songs they've ever written at the end of that record, like 9 albums in, just
Yeah.
because they can. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah, it's so great. And yeah, just the way that they do things live and the way they do everything. I can see why they'd be the archetype for you guys. And also Chris Martin, it just I think he'd be my number one person as far as rock stars that I'd want to like just get a beer with and hang out. He's
Yeah,
like, you know,
totally. He's
yeah.
just he's just such a genuine person. And I've loved watching his evolution. I think he's a
Mhm.
little out there now, and I think he's very like overtly like positive, but I think he is genuinely that happy, sometimes to the detriment of the music.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
like
No
I
puppets,
yeah,
please. Yeah.
but I think that no matter what, like who he is and what his vision is with that, I just relate to him.
Yeah.
Since Ryan and I started this whole thing, and I won't make it all about a band called Love, but I mean, like, I'd be remiss to not say, like, their band and seeing that documentary and seeing, like, Chris dream so big, but
Yeah.
not just he wanted to be in a big band, but rather because he had these songs and this idea of, let's make something bigger. And he just kind of
Yeah.
developed and refined that idea. And he went through highs and lows, and he really was that. introspective, kind of weird dude. He was also very funny and charismatic, and then he poked fun at himself, and then he got angry and had an angry face for a while, and then he just kind of like grew into himself more. Just
Yeah.
everything about him as a person who's like kind of in the celebrity world too, and
Right.
also a musician, and the fact that they've kind of really kept it together, the four of them, with him at
Yeah.
the helm and with Phil Harvey. Says less than a minute, but the fact they've done that and with him at the helm has always been so inspiring to me. Like,
Yeah. Oh
uh,
yeah. And
I
it's some of the greatest songs of this century. So
yeah.
yeah, I definitely a great pick. So
Yeah.
cool. So who is your number two?
And number two favorite artist of all time, and I'm gonna give a disclosure here because when I was on the last time I was on Dawson and Carson's podcast, shout out This Ain't a Scene, It's a Podcast. Um, Dawson got mad at me for saying you can't do top something personal favorite and then also do best because that is subjective, and he's right, but I
Yeah.
don't care. So I'm gonna say my number two favorite band is the band I would call the best band in the world that is
Okay.
an active band, and it's Radiohead. Um,
Yeah.
on the back of your,
Nice.
funny enough, I just as we were just talking, and I said like I was just name dropping. I was saying, if I had to pick a band that kind of like is like the proof of concept, I said Coldplay. I was like, in addition to all the other bands, I was like, and I said two, and I was like, and I realized it's these other two. Um,
Yeah.
Radiohead changed my life, as is the trend of everything on this list. And
Yes.
I really got into them because of you. I did listen to In Rainbows, I remember in I guess '07 or '08 because I was intrigued by the press that was like around that In Rainbows was free to they pioneered the whole like, free download kind of thing, like with for a whole album,
Yeah.
just giving it away. And I had listened, obviously, like I had heard Creep. I didn't really process by that point. I was like 15. I didn't really process 14 or 15. I was 14 when it came out, 15 when I really gave it a listen. And I didn't process quite that it was, oh, this is the Creep band, and then also, their
Yeah.
evolution. I only knew about them because enough people had mentioned to them. I didn't know anything about their origins. I didn't even know that Radiohead was a Talking Heads song. So, there was no way I could. I barely knew anything, but I listened to it in Rainbows. I remember when I listened to the first time, I was intrigued by it. I was like, this is not what I was expecting, at all, because the music I was into was very different at the time
Yeah.
from like what it was. And it was a good starting place. But then talking to you, I don't remember. Do you remember what the first record you showed me? Then was it the Bends? I don't remember.
I
I feel like
don't
it ends.
It might have been the Benz. And then I know for sure I definitely piqued your interest when I showed you the Saturday Night Live performances from the Kid A era.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Idiotech and the national anthem. Yeah, I
Yeah.
still those like some of my favorite live performances of songs like ever. Like those are, I think any Radiohead
So
fan like
great.
they're
Yeah.
just so and so wild.
Mm.
I love the idea. Just unrelated side note of like people going to SNL, like buying tickets to knowing that they were going to see Radiohead at that SNL thing, not really
Yeah.
knowing their music, but knowing they were the Creep band, and then seeing that.
Seeing.
Like yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
As my wife puts it, Tom York gyrating sadly.
Yes. So awesome, man.
In that case, it was more convulsing than gyrating, but tomato, tomato.
Yeah.
But yeah, they what's there to say about Radiohead that hasn't been said? I
Yeah.
think they I could sum it up with a Rolling Stone article from the 2000s off the heels of Kid A and Amnesiac that said the headline was, in order to save rock and roll, Radiohead had to utterly destroy it. And
Yeah.
they just metrically as a band, just a band, just five dudes, the same dudes from the beginning to the present. They have made, I think, some of not only the most influential, but some of the most unique and most beautiful, amazing music I think ever made by humans. I think in a lot of ways they are the end product of like musical evolution, and everything after that is like, well, let's try to make something unique. But I think
Yeah.
their sense of innovation, Tom York's brain, I relate to him a lot about like, not at all to put myself on his level, but I relate to him a lot about like the perennial like either disenchantment or falling back in love with guitar music. Like the way he describes how like around the time when he was getting sick of being the sad guitar band, he just wasn't interested anymore. How he would just like started driving down the countryside, just like blasting Aphex Twin, and like how like
Mhm.
primal that felt. And I relate to that a lot. I felt that way the first
Mhm.
time I would like when I was like 19, blasting Idiotech, driving at like 3 a.m. with my windows down at night, and I just feeling like
Mhm.
feral, like try
Yeah.
it captures everything they do, captures something I want to do in my own way, but also they have always done things in such a way that have either at one point or both have at one point made me want to quit music altogether because I was like, I will never make something even really good. And then simultaneously pushed me to think outside the box more, but
Yeah.
also never being so they've never been tokenly experimental. It's never the not with them, it's never the novelty of how weird it is. It's
Mhm.
always, what is this doing? What is the song doing? What is it saying? Like, what's the point of the song? And I love that.
Yeah.
I adore them. I love all five of them so much. Like Tom York, Johnny Greenwood, Colin Greenwood, Ed O'Brien, Phil Selway. I think they are all we as a five-piece band in that regard, we aspire to be that level of the most proficient at what we do in every way.
Yeah.
Watching on, now because of you, my daughter loves the In Rainbows Live
I
on
was
Main.
gonna say that, like, she gets so
Yeah,
hypnotized by
she's just
Reckoner.
like me. She is my
Yeah.
daughter. She's
Yeah.
but like
It's just so
yeah,
great.
like watching them play all those songs together, and even the ones that aren't on In Rainbows, like Mixomatosis, it's like
Mhm.
it is hypnotic.
Yeah.
Like I've never seen a band perform the way they do. There's just
Yeah.
like everything, the way they execute their songs. It's like they really reinvented to me what it means to be a band, and I feel like they finished what the Beatles started in a lot of ways. And it's funny
Yeah.
because them and the Beatles and Coldplay, they're all like parlophone bands, at least at some point in their
Yeah.
career.
Yeah. That's right.
And I think where the Beatles really took being a guitar band at the really when that started to really be what it was and become experimental, Radiohead just took that in this whole other direction. And
Mhm.
like, a lot of people, there was this one headline I remember that says that Coldplay chose to inherit the torch from U2 that Radiohead refused, and I really do feel that way about them. But I love that for them, and that's why I love both
Yeah.
of them. They get
Yeah.
compared to
That
each
makes
other,
sense.
but that's why
But
I
yeah,
love.
and Chris Martin adores Radiohead as well,
Yeah,
and
he said
would
I'll
say
never
they're
forget,
better.
he
Yeah.
summed up my feelings of OK Computer, saying like he's like I'd give my left testicle to write anything half as good as OK Computer.
Yeah.
I was
Exactly.
like, I feel that, man. Like it all literally, I got
Hmm.
so depressed in my senior year of high school, and I remember listening to like I got to like I think I got to No Alarms No Surprises, like, and I was like on a bus ride, I think, like to go into school, and I was like, I should just stop playing guitar. Like
Yeah.
I was like, this, like this, and it's not even a guitar song really, but it's just like what they did. I was like, how do you even? Now I know how they do that.
Yeah.
So, but that's the thing is they opened a whole world of possibility for me, starting with
Yeah.
bewilderment and
Right.
awe, of
And
course.
this
But
is the one band that we haven't had the chance to see together. Damn you, UGA. But
I understand. And
but
damn you, Hunter Gwynn.
yeah, yeah. Shout
Gotta
out to
agree.
Hunter. But yeah, dude, like maybe one day. I mean, as much as I do love the smile, but I hope I still have hope that they will get back together at one point.
Yeah.
It's possible.
We will talk about that in a minute too, but yeah, that they are one of the best bands I've ever seen live. It's not even close. Like
Yeah.
it's like they're like, dude,
Yeah.
you see Radiohead, it changes you forever. Yeah,
Oh yeah, for sure.
yeah.
So what's your number one?
My number one, if I had to pick number one favorite band of all time, preceding even the Coldplay and Brand New days and Thrice, because Thrice has always kind of been like a default, like they are there to, they're the only one I have tattooed on me. It's Linkin Park. It always will be Linkin Park. Um,
Okay.
they
Yeah.
set they set me on my musical journey. They completed the picture, like the frame of what I've always wanted to do. I always make the joke that it's funny because there's guitars like in the back. Half of those guitars are Brooks's, by the way. Like that first one right there isn't even mine.
Yeah.
In the studio, by the way. So like
Yeah.
um um but I'm a musician, and like every musician, like you and like millions of other people, billions even, I started with guitar. Guitar is my first real love. I started with piano. But like I always make the joke talking to my friend Scott and other producers who really got into a lot, especially like guitar music, post-hardcore, heavy music, or even just rock, grunge, indie, like all the stuff that is kind of in the alt adjacent world, whatever you want to call it. It's usually always guitar, right?
Mhm.
Guitar means the world to me. It's my primary instrument in a band called Love. It's my primary instrument. It's my primary typically I'm still my primary means of writing songs. I do a lot of it on the computer now too, and with keys and everything. But the reason I'm saying any of this is because like I often have the conversation with a lot of my guitar friends that I just wasn't a Guitar Hero kid. And I don't mean that in the literal sense of the video game. I'm saying like
Yeah.
I know a lot of people who really, Blake was one of those kids. Like he got into drums first, but like, he liked Metallica. He was
Right.
talking on his you can listen to his whole episodes about that. But what inspired me to pick up guitar wasn't like it just wasn't the showmanship of guitarists. I love it and I kind of have my own version of that because anyone who knows me as a touring musician has known like I'm notorious for being wild. Like but that allure was never part of what attracted me to music or made me want to start making music.
Mm-hmm.
I just loved when I was younger, I loved video game soundtracks. I loved Yoko Shimomura's and no Kingdom Hearts soundtrack, Nobuo Uematsu's Final Fantasy soundtrack. I loved Yo-Yo Ma. My mom showed me Yo-Yo
Mm-hmm.
Ma, and I always thank her to this day. That to this day, the live album, Obrigado Live in Brazil, like I mean, I get chills, full body chills listening to Libertango. And music like that was always like this thing of like all these elements weaving together to form a tapestry and scenery in my brain. And I could see it so vividly, and I still can.
Yeah.
And Linkin Park was the first band I ever heard where as much as I did like when I first heard Foo Fighters, or, like, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
like, my dad's not a big music guy, but like, yeah, he would disagree. But like, he showed me some bands and stuff when I was younger, and he would play bands in the car, like, like he went to
Mm-hmm.
high school, like Collective Soul. And so he would play stuff like that if it wasn't hip hop. And I
Right.
really related to hip hop more. And I'll always credit my dad for getting me into hip hop because, like, without him, I wouldn't have known like NWA, Beastie Boys, and Run DMC and stuff like that earlier. And this kind of segues it back into Linkin Park. But
Yeah.
the rock bands didn't really stick with me in that way or
Mm-hmm.
like make me want to like pick up guitar and write songs the way most people do. And I heard like I think it was like when my friend Ronnie he showed me like One Step Closer, but then he also showed me like A Place for My Head and like all these other songs. And then Meteora came out like around the time I was in fourth grade. And I
Yeah.
wasn't really into music like that. Or into when I say like that, I mean not like Linkin Park or heavy music, but I
Yeah.
wasn't into music like a person who likes music, like the way I am now.
Sure.
I had learned piano early on, but it frustrated me. So I just, I kind of just didn't stick with it as a little kid. And you're a little kid, ADHD, but like, but I remember like him showing me the songs on Meteora, and it was just something about three songs in particular. It was Faint,
Mm-hmm.
Habit, and Numb. All of the way it came together and the guitar, think of the guitars in those songs, the
Yeah.
guitar relationship with the music in each of those songs, the octaves and the open 3/8/5 progression in Faint, the
Mm-hmm.
picking like kind of like really in high intensity picking against the strings from the keyboards and breaking the habit, Numb, just the keyboard sample and just the power chords behind it. But
Yeah.
then the songs, like the melodies of what like Chester's voice, what he was singing, the ambient sounds, the turntables, the drums, Mike's rapping, which pulled my attention that from hip hop, which I loved hip hop first. And it just they built this tapestry of sound that formed a scene and a universe for the song to exist in. And
Right.
that I was like I'm like I want to tear up thinking about it because I still listen to
Mm-hmm.
these songs, man, and like even going all the way back to the demos, like when they were at Zero and then Hybrid Theory of the Band and then Linkin Park,
Yeah.
like they just like I said before, like Mike Shinoda, he established verbatim, we never wanted to be a conventional rock band. That wasn't what we are. It was always meant to be this thing where it was just exploring songwriting with all these sounds, like essentially make a film score and then put these songs over the film score. And there are all these relatable, real songs. Like it's like I would never feel comfortable resigning them to the new metal like group that like people
Right.
like to lump with because their music was just so much more serious and introspective and multifaceted and even just down to the way that they had like like Mike and Joe really channeled the like the bicultural aspect of what they are even in the imagery and the Japanese kanji in like
Mm-hmm.
the mech artwork and like just you play breaking I've said this to on Nolan's podcast but you play Breaking the Habit without even seeing the music video you hear this dismal back alley like at night in a rainy city and you hear
Mm-hmm.
and then when Chester's voice comes in you feel him in the room he's talking about it doesn't
Yeah.
just feel guitar a dude in a bar, and they just only grew from there. Like
Right.
everything they went on to do, all the way to A Thousand Suns and beyond, and Living Things, The Hunting Party, One More Light, every demo, every B-side, the universe that they've built to
Yeah.
this day, there is no other band like them. There will never be another band like them.
Yeah.
I would go so far as to say, like, the joke that some of our friends have said, I think it was Scott. He said, like, our band, a band called Love, sonically, and like in terms of scope and concept, and how, like, from genre to genre, but with Ryan's voice, gluing it all together, we kind of build like a very film thing. He called us the peace tree between Coldplay and Linkin Park, which I think is really funny.
That's
Um,
cool, man. Yeah, I can feel all three of your top three influencing, especially the most recent A Band Called Love stuff. So, yeah, that's awesome, man.
yeah, Linkin Park, dude, like they changed my life. I still to this day, like, I'm fortunate enough to like know some folks who kind of like are in that camp, but like to this day I want to just have a conversation with Mike. I wouldn't even be
Mm,
starstruck by him. He's just
yeah.
one of those people who, like, he knew what he set out to do, and
Hmm.
I feel that way. I relate to that. And that's that kind of visionary, that person, songwriter, producer, like creative director, world builder. To me, that is the beautiful magic of music, is just being able to think so outside the box that you build this thing that really reinvents the form itself, which is kind
Yeah.
of the trend of like the bands that I love the most, and
Yeah. Yeah.
embodied by the top three largely. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
lightning round, what are your honorable mentions of
Oh,
favorite
we
artists?
gotta do that. Oh man, hard. So we'll start with one that Blake already touched on. It's got to be the 1975.
Okay.
They Everything I've said about the genreless, like, just think outside the
Hmm.
box. Five perfect albums. They're millennials like me.
Hmm.
They almost meme and lampoon the pop thing that they've been pigeonholed into, because they really can't be
Yeah.
pigeonholed. Honestly. They do everything. But Matty Healy, I relate to Matty Healy so much. I listened to him on a podcast, and I just recently, and I heard him talk, and I was like, this guy's saying things I've said. Like, he
Hmm.
literally thinks so similarly about productions, and also just culture and trends, and the way I would love to put me, him, and Phil Harvey from the Coldplay camp in a room together and discuss culture and why it's changing the way it is, and
Yeah.
like it's popular and why it's popular, and how the socio-political landscape influences it all, and how obvious a lot of stuff is. And
Hmm.
it's just the way he's made the 1975 his diary. Like, I think people are awfully reductive of that band. If you're not a fan of the 1975, more than likely you have this idea of them, and more than likely that idea of them is a curated thing they did as a joke at some
Right.
point in their career.
Right. Yeah.
They have already moved on to something else. The four
Yeah.
of them, I would go so far as to call them, someone's going to give me crap for this, but I do not care, because I think this, and I mean this because they do it in a very tongue-in-cheek way. The four of them are like the modern Beatles. Like, I
Hmm.
really do think that. The four English dudes who are just like kind of just out there. Maddie and George together, especially, like, just as a producer songwriter combo. Like, and George is the drummer, but he's amazing. I mean, he runs their second record label. They have a second
Hmm.
record they own.
Yeah.
They're cool visionary dudes. Proof of
Yeah.
concept in a lot of ways. They make me think outside the box when it comes to my own production, especially with the thing I just sent you like yesterday. That was very much
Yeah.
subliminal influence of theirs, a ton. But yeah, love them.
Right.
And then Thrice, for all the reasons I said before. I don't need to reiterate it.
Right.
I mean, they're the only one on my arm for a reason.
Of
Dustin
course.
Nietzsche, Eddie and Riley Breckenridge, perfect band, amazing dudes. You'll notice that I think no, all of until recently for the top one, but I won't talk about that. But
Okay.
until for the top one, all of my favorite bands are, there's this weird trend of none of them have ever had lineup changes, which I think is interesting and worth noting.
Ah, yeah, yeah.
So Thrice would be one of those. And then my
Hmm.
third honorable mention is Circus Survive. Circus Survive is the perfect five-piece guitar band that Anthony Green is one of my favorite singer-songwriters of all time. I used to call him my favorite. He's amazing. Colin Frangisetto and Brendan Ekstrom as guitarists, right behind Johnny Buckland, are probably the most influential guitarists on me as a person. What everyone calls, like, the joking of the IJR, like, school of guitar playing, which is like tremolo picking and
Yeah, yeah.
diat. I just listening to the way that in their first two records, two perfect records, and three perfect records actually in a row, they never had rhythm guitar. It was all just like texture and just all this stuff. And Anthony singing, and just, dude, seeing both of the anniversary tour for their first two albums at the Tabernacle 2 years apart. Oh, dude, like,
Yeah.
Man, Circus Survive, going to see them live, I will say the reason that I wanted to talk about them, and I'll cut it off after this, is they are my favorite band to see live. The
Yeah.
pit for what they are, and not even a mosh pit, just people singing. It's how spiritual it is. They are my favorite band to see live. It is not even close. Like it is
Yeah.
so unlike anything. I adore that band. Also, Anthony, next to Chester, is one of the first artists who, like, with my tenor kind of voice, he's one of the first artists I felt like I could sing along to because he just has super high, like he's got like half
Yeah.
an octave above me, and he rules, man. He rules
Yeah.
in every band he's in. But that's my favorite band of his. I adore that band with a passion. All
Okay,
right,
nice. So
yeah,
we can now move on to the most difficult usually of these questions,
yeah.
which is yeah, top three favorite songs of all time.
So
What's your number three?
this wasn't intentional, but two of them are from two of my favorite bands that I
Hmm.
listed already. So I'm
Okay.
not
That
but
happens a lot. Yeah.
two and one. So number three is you're not going to see it coming just based on this conversation so far, but you'll as soon as I say it, you're going to be like, oh yeah, I should have seen this. So
Yeah.
number three for me, if I had to pick of all the songs that exist, and I just tried to think intuitively with it instead of overthinking it, The Pretender by Foo Fighters.
Okay. Yeah.
Pretender came out, so Echo, Silence, Patience, and Grace came out in '08, I think, if I recall
Hmm.
correctly. But that single came out in '07, I think, like in that music video. And
Hmm.
I won't even get into the contentious, weird, like, uh, argument that I had with my father over that, who liked that band, by the way. But my dad's a weird guy, and he's not going to listen to this because he didn't listen to anything. And so like, but the reason I'm saying that though is there is content. I'm not just trying to needlessly say that.
Yeah.
Is that that song was the first time if anyone who knows that song and knows the music video and knows what it's about, the conversation I had with my father over that song
Hmm.
made me realize this is what I want to do. This is it was the sheer like boldness of just Dave Grohl being authentically himself, not because he was a famous rock star, not because he was a millionaire, not because Foo Fighters was already successful after no successful, just him being who he is,
Right.
writing this defiant, beautiful song using the chord structure from Stairway to Heaven to write this just badass, like almost punk, but really just huge universal sounding song with
Yeah.
just guitars and
Yeah.
vocals. Um, and Taylor Hawkins on that song, rest in peace, man. Like just all of it, like him doing that gave me my first real anthem of like as a 14-year-old saying like not just a rebel without a cause, really identifying something that I still have right here.
Hmm.
It said to me, I don't do this thing that everyone else wants to do. This song and dance that we have to go. I think John
Mm.
Mulaney says that it one time. He's like, that like BS way we have to talk through life. Like the rest of it.
Yeah.
Like no,
Right.
I relate to that so much because I mean,
Mm.
even at award shows back then, I remember watching one of him. I think it was at the Grammys or something. He was there at an award and he had to wear a suit for the one time, and he was just kind of like visibly uncomfortable. He was just smiling, like just with one.
Yeah.
And I I've related to what he set out to do artistically for a long time. I don't love every Foo Fighters release, but they are one of my favorite bands, and Brooks talked
Yeah.
enough about it. But
Sure.
that song really altered my brain chemistry. It said to me
Hmm.
that if you feel this, if you relate to this at all, it's because it was made for you. It's like you aren't like the others. It's not just that you're special or you're some like
Yeah.
God's gift sent to change the world or anything like that. No, but it means that like you are smart enough to identify or you're cognizant enough to identify um what it says in the bridge, like I'm the voice inside your head you refuse to hear. I'm the face that you have to face mirrored in your stare. I'm what's left and what's right. I'm the enemy. And then the so who are you? You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
it keep you in the dark. They all pretend. And then just the chorus speaks for itself. Like,
Yeah.
dude, a full body chills right now just talking about it. That song, like in the music video, I saw it and I was like, I'm like, it's like I saw myself for the first time, really. And
That's awesome, man.
I saw on
Yeah.
his or anything like that, but man, like
Yeah.
That's changed forever. I showed it to my 1-year-old daughter, and I was like, "This is important." When she was
Yeah.
one, she's almost 3 now. But when she was one, I did show it to her one time, and I was like, "This is really important." She loved it. Like it was so cool, you know?
Okay. I thought you were gonna say she was like, "Duh, this isn't Radiohead, but it's all
Yeah,
right." Yeah, yeah.
I mean, she would if she could articulate that. You know,
Yeah, yeah, at that age, that's true. Um, so what's your number two?
The Catalyst by Linkin Park from A
Okay.
Thousand Suns.
Yeah.
I could talk forever about it. I've said on Nolan's podcast, and I've said on many podcasts. I said it in an interview recently that like unknowingly Dots on a Spinning Sphere by a band called Love was not an attempt to do this, but it eventually naturally became me accomplishing this goal for the first time. But I've always said in my adult life that in many ways, The Catalyst by Linkin Park is the feeling, it's appropriately named. It's the feeling that I have been chasing in my art ever since I heard it. The first
Hmm.
time I heard that song, and I'm not trying to replicate the sound. I have no interest in being a part two or creating a part two of anything that exists. But the feelings that I felt, especially when we watched it live and I saw it actualized and realized what a band could do, what artists could do with sound,
Yeah.
and what a song could be. That ending, I think, is like the most titanic, most amazing like ending of a song ever put to
That
tape.
buildup is so
Like
great. Yeah.
it feels like it's so appropriate that the only thing that closes that album is The Messenger, because that's the only song that could after that. There's nothing that you
Yeah.
could do. Like they really completed their mission with The Catalyst, I think.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
and everything else was just gravy after that. Like it was just everything else after that was just victory lap.
Yeah.
'Cause that's
Exactly.
just like it's a perfect intersection of like everything I love about music, but also just songs. And it's just, I mean, what it's trying to say after everything it says in the context of that record, but also in a vacuum, just by
Hmm.
itself. I'm like, it's so much more than just like sound or a band. It's like you feel it in your veins. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's
Totally.
yeah.
Yeah. It
Um,
almost feels like, and that has some similarities musically to like worship music in a way,
yeah,
but it does feel spiritual in that
yeah,
way as well, I think.
yeah.
But yeah.
Scott put it this way when he talked about the first time he heard, because Scott, our friend Scott Siegel, shout out, he
Hmm.
mixed the single version of Infinite that's out and Dots on a Spinning Sphere. When he listened back to the test mix in his car, like he was like he said this about the Catalyst first. He said
Yeah.
when I heard the Catalyst for the first time, he's like, I felt like this energy, even though it's kind of coming out in this
Hmm.
EDM tinged rock song.
Yeah.
He's like the energy of what the Catalyst, and he said it felt ancient, and
Hmm.
Dots made me feel that when I listened back to the mix the first time he was like in my car,
Yeah. Totally.
and I heard everything you did in the production in my
Hmm.
mix, and he was like, it was like that, and I was like, oh my god, like I was like, I did it, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah. You
and
did, man. Dots is freaking amazing. I love that
I
song.
did so
Oh
much of
my
that at
God.
my end. It's so funny how we were not trying to make a song at all. Was not even remotely consciously influenced by Linkin Park. Definitely
Yeah.
subliminally, but not remotely. But the stacks of his vocals sound weirdly enough like Chester and Mike on A Thousand Suns specifically, or even on Minutes
Hmm.
to Midnight, like certain parts where the vocals. And I remember hearing that, and I'm like, surely this is proof of something very spiritual with music that exists that transcends the person making it in the
Yeah.
art. Like, I'm not trying to speak on us. I'm saying that, like, the
Right.
fact that you're Chester and Mike's tonality in what's
Hmm.
going on here in
Yeah.
Ryan's voice, who sounds nothing like either of them. You know what I mean? It
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
interesting. Like, the creative decisions that led to that result did that. The
Yeah.
Catalyst, man, A Thousand Suns, Linkin Park. I could talk forever about them.
For sure, man. So what's your number one?
My number one, if I had to pick one, it was again, I went intuitive. The only song I could put above The Catalyst for all of the same reasons as The Catalyst and more is Clocks by Coldplay. I think
Whoa.
I think Clocks is a perfect song. I think there's a reason it was as massively popular as it was. I think there's a reason that anyone who hears it, half the people who hear don't even know it's like Coldplay. They don't even
Right.
know it's that band that gets made fun of.
Yeah.
I think Clocks embodies some kind of profound energy at the center of the universe, so to speak, because that's what it sounds
Hmm.
like. And Chris Martin in his 20s just harnessed that. He just happened to be the vessel for what that was.
Yeah.
And everything that song is saying, you know those lyrics, you know that song. you specifically, but also anyone listening to this, but you specifically, John, I don't
Hmm.
have to reiterate what that song is doing, but the fact that it's saying all the things it's saying in the verse, all of it to amount to that chorus, to you are, and
Yeah.
nothing else compares, and to
Yeah.
soak in that and the sound of it, especially the way they do it live, because they already showed
Oh
up on that
yeah.
second record more confident than they did on the first record, but they weren't the band they are now performing it. So when you listen
Exactly.
live, it's like the fully realized thing. I feel like that song, it's so simple, but there's no other song in the world like it. They
Hmm.
tried to replicate it themselves on their next record, and they were like, let's never do that again, even though that
Right.
was also massively successful after that.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
we covered it ourselves with just guitars, bass, vocals, like Ryan playing drums and me singing it. We covered it on a recording, and it's going to be on a second EP. And you've heard that cover, and I listened
It
back to
is a
that,
great cover.
and,
Yeah.
and with, and I appreciate you saying that. I'm not trying to be false humble. I'm saying with no credit to me and Ryan, when we listened back to the master of it, the first time we got the master of it back, it like shook us, not because of what we did, but because of how good the song is, like what they created,
Yeah.
because we modeled it after the live version. But
Right.
every, and you know this, you've discussed it. I heard you discuss it one time on a podcast with Dom,
Hmm.
which is Dom Maduri and Test and Jam Studio. But
Yeah.
how he was, you and him were talking about how like I thought of every little moment of the live guitars and what Johnny does, especially in the bridge, which is very different, how they chop out one section live. We
Yeah.
modeled it after that, but when we played it back and heard what we did, it was like, oh, this song just, it is that song
Yeah.
exists in a place all its own, much like
Yeah.
the cat. It feels ancient. The
Yeah.
fact that it's piano driven, it's mostly piano, man, and
Uh-huh.
just comes in the just the way it all comes together, the sense of common existence that they embody as a band is summed up in that song. It's like Chris could have just, he could have called it there and he would have succeeded,
Yeah.
but he kept going and made more records, and they were all amazing after that. But that song, dude, there is no other song like that song. I don't care if anyone clowns on me for that. That is my favorite song of all time. Like that song, it makes me feel like privileged to be a human. That's
Yeah.
how crazy that song is to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah,
I, I
when you see it live with the freaking lasers shooting out on top of it, it's ridiculous, man. It's so good.
oh, that van, dude.
Yeah.
Everything
Yeah.
about it.
I'm
Yeah,
so
dude.
glad we got to see them together too, which I don't know if some of this will segue into the next
It will.
question or not, but yeah, that was an amazing experience. So
If you just
so
even look at the artwork on the, I just want to say this, looking at the
yeah.
artwork of the Rush of Blood to the Head on the back of your wall, no song in my mind has ever sounded more like its album artwork.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ever. The A Thousand Suns comes close, but that is how that looks. That is the
Hmm.
feeling of experiencing that.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
I
So
want to
do
talk
you
about,
have a quick honorable mention before we go on to the last question?
yeah. My in so this is in descending order because I was going kind of the inverse with each of these, I should say.
Yeah.
Beggars by Thrice, which is,
Yeah.
oh, it's your favorite Thrice song. It's the record after the Alchemy Index. They stripped it back, made a garage kind of jam indie like piano record. What that song embodies, I shouldn't even have to explain it. Go read the lyrics, go listen to it.
Amazing.
That is a perfect song by a band that is saying everything that the entire world needs to hear. I am almost in tears just thinking about that song right now. Like,
Yeah.
and the
Yeah.
fact that we're going to see it live together. If everyone in the world could hear and process what that song is saying, the world would be a completely different place. I sound like
Yeah.
Tommy Wise.
I was about to say that.
Um,
Yeah, that's
I can
great.
do the, and because I couldn't talk about these records, one of them was a rule I made, was one of them was an instrumental record,
Hmm.
mostly at least. So I didn't want instrumental records to make this, but I have to say this for this one. The song Fire Made of Flesh by Caspian from the album
Hmm.
Wait. Caspian is an instrumental band on Triple Crown Records, label mates with Adjy, who I now play for, who I will talk about in a second, and who they label mates with Brand New, Moving Mountains, Oh Brother, all those, that kind of that scene of bands. And Caspian, you know, three guitars, all instrumental, keyboard, ambience, like just beautiful, beautiful. Like they just they do so much with so many different kinds of sounds. And it's always this beautiful ambient post rock a la. I think Caspian perfected what Explosions in the Sky started.
Yeah,
And if you listen to all of the album Waking Season front to back, which I think we might have one time when I lived back home when I was younger and when I had
I
that
think
record on,
so. Yeah.
But we should do that again sometime because it's just when that song gets to the end of what it's doing, it feels like it's the heaviest thing I've ever heard. And it feels like I feel like I'm experiencing God when I hear that song. And it's just 10 minutes of just the most amazing Titanic buildup. I didn't know guitars could do that until
Hmm.
I heard that band. And it
Yeah.
made me think this is what I want to do. You know what I mean? Like, and that's the
Hmm.
thing. Like, what Linkin Park started me on, and Circus Survived, Johnny Buckland, Caspian with that song, but with that whole record and their whole discography made me realize, oh, guitar is not just guitar. It's like creating a universe, like an enveloping wave. That's what it
Yeah.
should, at least to me. And so
Right.
that song is the most potent example of that. The last one, I couldn't put this in a record, not even an honorable mention because I run my mouth about it, but In Medias Res, Between Longing and Mystery by Adjy.
Mm.
Um,
Hmm.
Adjy, one of my favorite bands of all time. I have had, you already know this, but I had the privilege of joining them. I am now their lead guitarist, and I was on tour with them this whole summer. Playing this song every night made me that much more in love with it. The album, The Idol Opus, is what it comes from. I'm not even going to begin to try to explain The Idol Opus. It's in my top 20 favorite records of all time.
Yeah.
Um, but that song and how it sets off the narrative and perfectly in a vacuum by itself, but also in context of the narrative of the concept of that record
Hmm.
is the way Chris Noyes uses the melody of In Christ Alone to set up this really sad, like this tragic story of this person trying to like deal with his own loss and then finding what seems to be hope, but basically telling the end of the story in the first song before, like making it so obvious what the ending is going to be before you even hear the rest of the album. And yet,
Hmm.
setting it up so perfectly. Playing that song every night not only challenged and changed how I looked at guitar playing, but it made me feel when I would watch the crowd sing it back to us the way I sing it in my car.
Yeah.
I I felt we're like channeling something much bigger than ourselves.
Right.
And that song by far next to one other is it was I mean my favorite one to play every night, every single night. And just the fact that I got to join one of my favorite bands and play it is why I have to talk about it for at least a second because it was
Yeah.
like I didn't know. I loved that song already. My daughter heard it in the womb. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
But like just this summer really codified that as that's one of my favorite songs ever written. I think it's one of the most brilliant songs and albums ever written by man. But yeah, I just had to get my Adjy thing in
Yeah,
there real
yeah, for sure,
quick.
man. Nice. Yeah, you've done a good job fitting these things in, man, because it's so hard to whittle down a top three.
Yeah.
Um, and really, like I have to give a shout out. I can't believe I haven't yet, 4 episodes in at this point. But Ruben is the reason I'm doing this because we were
Oh
talking about like top
yeah.
fives, and he was like, "No, no, top three, because it's the best of the best, man." And I'm like,
Best of the best.
"Yeah, that
Shout out
it's so much."
my
Yeah,
Isra.
he's the coolest, man. And yeah, mi compadre. But yeah,
Yeah.
he's like he's so right because it challenges you to like really get down to the core, the very best of the best. So, with that being said, we've made it to the final question. This is a fun one. Top three concert experiences, some of which we may have already mentioned to some degree, but what are they for you starting at number three?
This was super hard. I'm gonna give a preface since we have like a little we have a little more time behind the scenes to do this
Yeah.
one. Um there's a preface I have to give that we talked about this the other day at the house when I was visiting y'all. Uh I've seen a lot of live music. And so um,
Yes.
I didn't have that cool experience that a lot of people have where like you did, where your first concert was Page and Plant, like and you got my parents didn't do that growing up. My mom and dad just for whatever reason they didn't go see live music, so I didn't either. So my
Mhm.
first like 20 shows were like all local shows. I'm really thankful for that because it set me up well. Like I got to experience like D market concert tours like that were like coming through churches, VFW halls and stuff like that. So I really started from the bottom and went all the way up. My very first time ever seeing an arena show or like an amphitheater show that wasn't Warped Tour, just because my friend snuck me in,
Mhm.
was when you and me went to go see Deftones in 2017. That
Right.
isn't one, by the way. But the reason I say that is because that scale of production what that did really changed how I look at it. So I'm not
Hmm.
trying, so I'm giving that preface to say my rule is not to be a snob, and it's not to be like, oh, anything below arenas or amphitheaters or stadiums, none of that's like real. I'm not doing that. But it's like I
Yeah.
have seen so much live music in
Right.
my life that some of the best shows I've ever seen that I would put in my top 10 would all be like stuff from like Purgatory, Hell Sized Rooms, all the way at the Masquerade in Atlanta, all the way to like the Tabernacle.
Hmm.
Purposes of this list to make something succinct, I am
Yeah.
only doing like a market amphitheater arena concerts. Like
Okay.
that is going to be the qualifier, even for the honorable mentions, just because I mean, dude, half the bands that we've already talked about, I would just,
Yeah.
like it would be impossible.
Right.
So my number three, that being said, was Coldplay, the Music of the Spheres tour of 2022 at Mercedes-Benz Stadium with you and Ryan and Blake. Blake was also
Yeah. Yeah.
uh,
Some overlap from Blake's episode.
yep,
Yes.
overlap. That dude, what can I say that he didn't already say? I mean, dude, I
Yeah.
got to see one of my favorite bands ever for the first time, and man, did they not disappoint. I loved
Yeah.
the Music of the Spheres record. It is one of the weaker records to me, but man, I love Higher Power, and getting to see
Hmm.
them open with Music of the Spheres, the intro after doing the little like what was the they did what was the 80s movie thing they did when they
Oh,
were
that I think it was the ET
it was ET,
theme
yeah, yeah, yeah,
song.
it
Yeah.
was the
Yeah.
yeah.
Hmm.
And then going from that and then just kind of like waving to everybody, and then you hear the sample come in
Yeah.
and we're saying Music of the Spheres, and just everything gets dark. You see them. They had already like came on the stage and waved to everybody and smiled, but then it all starts. And the way it just dropped into Higher Power, I was like,
Yeah.
this is what a live experience should be. And just everything, man. They pioneered the Xylo band, like I mean now Taylor Swift and everyone else pays
Yeah.
them to use that technology. They pioneered like eco-friendly green like bikes to power
That
the
was
stage.
very cool.
Dude,
Yeah.
what like if you are a human being with a pulse, go see Coldplay live once. I don't care if you hate them, just go see them. It will
Yeah.
change your life. It is amazing. It is the if
Yeah.
you believe in God, just go see that, and that's the closest thing. That's better than church, but it's cool. It is the coolest thing you will get next to a spiritual experience, because it is a spiritual experience. It's just, dude,
Yeah.
that show was so cool. And we were in the nosebleed. We were at the top of the back center, and
Didn't matter.
it
Yeah.
didn't matter at all. I was having the time of my life, dude. I have a video of me looking at you and Ryan both during Fix You, where I panned to both of y'all and
Oh
seeing
man.
that song live, dude. All of them, Clocks, Fix You, even the segment that they call it, it's not called the dance club, but it's called something. The light club is what it's called. When they did
Yeah.
like the breakdown of Paradise, Charlie Brown live, man. Oh, dude,
Oh yeah.
the thing is, they closed with Beautiful. I wish they had closed with Coloratura. Don't get me wrong. I love
Yeah.
Beautiful. I was a new father at the time, so that song means a lot to me. I loved that song, and everyone thought it was goofy and whatever. But it doesn't matter. But the point being is, they closed with that, and
Hmm.
even though that wasn't even the highlight of the night, and I love that song, it's just proof of how they're not that band that has to close with that one song, because their whole
Right.
list is some of the biggest songs in the world, and they're all amazing.
Oh man, I think
No,
they went like back to back with Viva La Vida and The Scientist, and it
yes,
was just
dude,
like
dude, I was like
so many amazing songs, man.
the, the
Ridiculous.
the scientist, man, dude, live in this thing is also, I want to say too, because there's one other, the one above this, when
Hmm.
I get to it in a second, and that'll be a nice segue. Was also at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. That show, that was my first show there. That has set, Scott and I talk about this all the time. So do me and Ryan, but Scott and I mainly.
Hmm.
Driving out of the Masquerade in Atlanta, when you turn right on MLK, there's a little part that's under construction, and you can see Mercedes-Benz Stadium in the distance. Now, I drive by Mercedes-Benz all the time, but when you drive from the Masquerade after you've just played a show, you're leaving a show, and it's right there.
Yeah.
It feels like when you're playing a video game and the final boss is like gated off, like you
Yeah.
can't access that area yet.
Right.
seeing Coldplay there, I was like, we are going to do that. I'm saying it now on recording. We will play there. That is my highest metric. I want to play all
Mhm.
the big stages. Tabernacle is my favorite music venue in the world, and I
Yeah.
dream of playing there one day. That'll be the next one. I've already done Heaven at the Masquerade. I've done all the stages there. I've done the Ritz in Raleigh. I've played some of my. This summer I played Bells in Kalamazoo, Michigan. I've always wanted to play. I never thought I'd play there, and just being
Yeah.
able to do the things I've done. But Mercedes-Benz Stadium, what it is, not because of the grandeur of it or anything like that, but the way it's shaped, the way it brings people together, and a
Hmm.
show like Coldplay's to be the first one I experienced there, I was
Yeah.
like, that's like the tip top to me. That's
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
top. And I aspire to that. So if I at least shoot for that and land lower, at least I shot for that.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was the ceiling. Because it's just, dude, Coldplay, man,
Yeah.
there's something about that band. There's a
Yeah.
reason everyone hates them. And I just think it's the
You
reality.
are the meme,
Yeah,
dude.
there's a
You
reason
are.
everyone hates them, and I'll just say it. It's because they are
Yeah.
metrically the biggest band in the world for a good
Yeah.
reason. On Spotify,
Well,
they are number four behind three solo artists. They're the biggest band on streaming numbers on Spotify, and that tour that we went and saw is now, and I don't care if everyone split wants to split hairs with me about whether they're a rock band or not. They have guitar, bass, and drums. There's a singer. They are a rock band. They do a million things like everyone else does. But it broke the record this year for the highest grossing concert tour by a
yeah.
rock band of all time in human history. There is a reason for that. That's what I'm saying.
But
That
but
it
do
was
you know how I know you're gay though? I'm just kidding. No, dude, like seriously.
awesome.
I
No,
agree with everything you said. Like
yeah.
absolutely.
And I remember, I think you said, and for different reasons, of course, I think you said that was your favorite experience seeing them, even though you saw them on the Viva La Vida tour, like, which to,
Yeah, and well, yeah, it's weird because like the seeing them outside in the Masquerade parking lot,
yeah,
it's kind of tied for me just because it was so unusual and so close.
and you would never
And
get to do that now, kind of thing. Yeah,
yeah, like who can
so
say that
hard.
happened? Just a very small group of people. So
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, I still would have loved to have seen them inside the Masquerade and like
did it.
see the
Yeah,
full set, but the
especially
fact
in
that
that.
yeah, exactly. But yeah,
Yeah,
what an amazing experience. But yeah, dude, great number three. So what's your number two?
I know I'm gonna get flack for this. This goes hand in hand with what the joke used to be like. I know you're gay. Like it's just like it's so many people
Yeah.
unless you get it. Let's say you're just
Mhm.
a musician, songwriter, producer, person, and you just like you. But
Yeah.
the beautiful thing about what I'm about to say is you don't have to be because this dude in the same arena broke the record for the most tickets sold in that stadium 3 weeks after Taylor Swift played there three times.
Oh,
So
I know where you're going.
not
Okay.
only not only do the producer songwriter bros know what I'm talking about, the whole
Yeah.
world knows it.
Oh yeah.
But if you know. It was me and Ryan going to see Ed Sheeran on the Mathematics tour last year. He did it.
Yeah.
He's in the middle of the tour still, but he's doing a world tour embodying all of his five albums.
Hmm.
They're all math. They use a different sign for each album. He's been doing that since the genesis of his career. Um, Ed Sheeran is one of the best artists I've ever seen in my life. He might be the best artist I've ever seen in my life. And I wasn't expecting that. Now,
Hmm.
I got those tickets for Ryan from a friend of ours. Shout out Jeremy, former Jeremy Russell, former drummer of the band Glimmers and tons of other bands. He's my homie. He and his partner, they couldn't go. So he was like, "Yo, do you want to go see Ed Sheeran?" And I was like, let's go. Like
Yeah.
and Ryan, when Ryan first brought Colors Bloom and what would become Another Life to me, our songs, um, he was telling me a band called Love started as a solo project of Ryan's, where I was going to be the producer and like live person. You know what I mean?
Right. Right.
And it morphed into the band that it is. But when he brought it to me, we were really on a kick of like we were bonding over Coldplay in the 1975, but just as much we were bonding over John Mayer and Ed Sheeran. And Ed Sheeran really Ryan was already a pretty proficient guitarist. For context, he played drums in a post-rock band like Caspian or Explosions in the Sky, or this is a story called Lorraine. Love Lorraine. They're actually an active band again, so shout out Lorraine. Amazing band. They're one of my favorite bands from Atlanta.
Hmm.
Ryan was the drummer in that band, but he also was one of the principal writers, so he did write some of the guitar work in that band, even though he's not principally a guitarist first, like expressly.
Yeah.
Um, but it made him aspire to want to even though Ryan approaches guitar very unconventionally, very differently, he's watched like Callum Graham videos of like an open T tuning and just kind of like tapping and stuff. Not like
Hmm.
math rock tapping, but like singer-songwriter kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Ryan's like not a guitarist in the way that Blake and I are, but man, he wrote Colors Bloom. Like that song and how it's played. Like, dude,
I
I can
remember specifically actually you handing me him on the phone in
yeah,
downtown Buford. We were walking by Toast and Jam, the old
yeah,
studio, and me telling him that how much Colors Bloom reminded me of Ed Sheeran, like in a good way.
yeah.
And I remember him being psyched about that.
There's a
And but
reason for
yeah,
that. Yeah, dude. Like
yeah.
Ed was just this archetype of like this is a guy who can do anything. Like
Hmm.
he proved and demonstrated so on in his live show single-handedly that even whether the songs where he has a full band or not,
Hmm.
it's just him really. Like he's doing all
Yeah.
he's equally as good of he's an amazing guitarist. He's probably one of the best living guitarists that exists. But he's also just an amazing songwriter. And he
Hmm.
can span any genre. Dude, he's a white ginger British dude and he can rap
Yeah.
well. Like
Yeah. And
that's
what he does with foot pedals is nuts. So, like
that's the
it's
thing is his
yeah.
vision is so potent that he
Hmm.
had to practice his ass off for years to get
Hmm.
as good at what he does and he did it. Like, dude, there's a whole story of he lived on Jamie Foxx's couch when he was a nobody for like 6 weeks, and
Hmm.
he would like play cover gigs. He'd play like 300 shows a year,
Wow.
shows being like cover gigs where he basically just show his stuff and
Hmm.
just kind of like win over people who didn't know who the hell he was. And he would use those to promote like his much bigger shows where he'd like get a chance to open for someone relevant at the time, like at
Yeah.
a tabernacle sized venue. But it would be like one off shows half the time. Like the dude was
Hmm.
so smart
Yeah.
and wrote about he knew he could become what he is now. He had enough vision and foresight to see that his instinct with songwriting would lead him to write the type of songs that would amass huge. I'm talking pre-Shape of You or Bad Habits or any of that stuff. I'm talking just
Hmm.
songs that are still massive. Like, I mean, dude, Perfect is like the wedding song now. It
Hmm.
has billions of streams, but
Yeah.
it's a beautiful song, dude. Like that
Hmm.
song's amazing. It makes me like tear up thinking about it. Like it's like and and he knew that he could access that, but he could also do any genre he wants. Like, dude, that song that I showed you the 10-minute long live thing of in studio, it's You Need Me, I Don't Need You. Dude, that
Yeah,
is
man.
that song might be the most earned braggadocio song of all time.
Yeah.
Maybe. Maybe. I mean, next to like, I'm not trying to compare it with hip hop necessarily, even though
Yeah.
there's a lot of hip hop influence in the song. But I'm
Right.
saying next to anything Kendrick might write,
Yeah.
that
Did he
song might.
do that at the concert?
Yes, it was the third to last song. He did
Yeah.
it, he did it all just by himself, and I was like, and that was, and also me and Ryan, we didn't know when we got the tickets from Jeremy, but dude, Jeremy hooked it up. We were right in front of him. And part of the
Wow.
technicality why Ed sold more tickets and broke the record for most seats sold at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, which is,
Yeah.
by the way, 76,000 people.
Wow. I didn't realize it was that many. Yeah.
76,000. Um, was because he set up the Mathematics Tour stage was all in the middle. So even though
Mm.
Taylor Swift had played there on the Eras Tour 3 nights in a row, 3 weeks before that, she
Yeah.
had to set up her whole stage to, like anyone else, like Coldplay, that took up the back half of the room.
Right.
So he sold all the seats, and dude, me and Ryan were like right up there. Like we were like maybe
Wow.
like a few, like less than 100 feet from him. And dude,
Yeah.
just watching him actually do it. He before the last song, he broke a string and he literally chuckled. He's like, "This is how you know we're doing it live." And he like, and and it was cool. You
Yeah.
almost would have planned it, but it was very obvious. He was like tuning and the string just broke. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
That's great,
and,
man.
like well, the other thing too is like me and Ryan were there, and I took him for it was like his 30th birthday, and I was like, dude, let's. It was like his birthday was like the next day, and I
Yeah.
was like, good to do this. It's gonna be really cool. But we walked away from that. I'll never forget that night. Ryan and I walked away from that, and we got in the car, and I remember we were just so almost more than the Coldplay show. We were jazzed because we saw the effect that even though a lot of it was the showmanship and the impression, the impressiveness of what Ed did, that we can't.
Hmm. Yeah.
The real thing the real reasons everyone was in that room, besides just him, the showmanship was what they're getting for the money they're paying. But the reason that they all congregated in the first place was his songs. That was the
Yeah.
thing. We left that show, and the whole time we were like, we're gonna do this. Like,
Yeah.
because what he did and
Right.
why those songs worked and why our songs work the way they do. It was just like I'm not trying to like overstate our band or anything like that, but I mean like it gave me this confidence of this is why people pack out arenas for an artist. It's because
Yeah.
the songs, what the songs are.
And if
And
you haven't heard Colors Bloom, everybody, please do yourself a favor and check it out. It's still to this day one of the best A Band Called Love songs, which is really saying something. So,
it just crossed 20,000 streams this week, which was cool.
whoa, what? Okay.
It's about time. Infinite was released like half as long ago and is almost caught up to it, but that's because
Yeah.
that video went semi-viral for a second. But
Nice.
Colors finally crossed that nice 20,000 threshold, so I was happy to see that.
Awesome,
That
man.
for
Well, that,
only 100 monthly listeners,
yeah.
um, but yeah, man, Ed, dude, Ed Sheeran, like I don't care. Again, much like Coldplay, if you don't like him, that's fine. Go see him live. Just
Yeah.
go. It's worth
Yeah.
it. You'll have
Yeah.
the best nights of your life.
You've sold me, man.
Yeah,
Definitely. So,
I believe it. I would never have thought that would be the case, and I liked him already, but like
yeah.
I wouldn't have thought number two, but that's
Right.
just
Yeah,
art.
yeah. So, okay, I think I might know what your number one is, but yeah, what is it?
It was called Phillips Arena at the time, not State Farm, because I'll talk about State Farm in a second. But Lincoln Park, the A Thousand Suns World Tour at
Okay, okay.
State Farm.
Yeah,
Um, dude, what can I say that I didn't already say?
yeah.
I was there with you, my mom, Tyler Fleischman. Shout out Ty. Um,
Yo, yeah.
my dude.
I remember like you just seemed like just in awe and speechless like almost the whole time. So,
That show, man. I mean, everything I said about Linkin Park before, about A Thousand Suns, about the Catalyst, dude. It was like the way it opened with the Requiem and the Radiance, just like on the record, and you actually
mhm.
saw the clip in with the audio of Oppenheimer, like,
Oppenheimer, yeah.
and just dude, the way they did everything, the medleys too, the way they did the medleys of One Step Closer with A Place for My Head.
Oh yeah,
Dude,
man.
all of they played all of my favorite songs, man. Like I think the only song, and they only just released it official. I've had the MP3 rip of it since 2006, but like, um, they only just released it recently. But like QWERTY, that really heavy demo between Meteora and Minutes I would argue might be their heaviest song. That's
Hmm.
like the only song I think I've seen them that I never saw them play live. That I wish I had seen them play live because at that show they played again four-way tie for the first four records of their band being my favorite, like Hybrid
Yeah,
Theory, Meteora, they had like Minutes to Midnight and A Thousand Suns. I will asterisk a Hybrid Theory with Hybrid Theory Reanimation specifically. I think those are the final forms of those songs, with the exception of In the End.
yeah.
Reanimation, I think
Oh,
it's
reanimation is great. Yeah,
I perfect. It's perfect. It's perfect. It's perfect. It's perfect as a listening experience. But
yeah,
but all of those songs, I got to see all of my favorites from all of them at that show. Every single one.
yeah,
I never thought that would happen. And I was
yeah.
17, the only time I got to be in the same room as Chester Bennington. And like, I mean, dude, I'll never get that back.
Even
Even if,
didn't they close with Bleed It Out? I think was the very last song. That was really cool too.
dude,
Yeah.
I loved that song when Minutes to Midnight came out. I loved all of
Yeah.
Minutes to Midnight. Yeah. It was special, man. Like, it's like, that was the best tour to see them on. I maintain that I'm not just saying that because it was the only one I saw. I don't
Yeah.
think there was a better tour that anyone could have ever seen them on. Living Things looked amazing. I wish I had gone now, looking back. I almost went. It was 2012. But man, dude, like, and it was so impressive.
Yeah.
That was right before I turned 18, too. Like, I was right still in that sweet spot of like, and also, again, only a few months before that, in 2010, was my first amphitheater show that wasn't warped, where I went to see Deftones with you. So
Yeah.
my first concert, if you want to look at it that way, in an
Yeah.
arena,
Right, right.
the hundreds of local shows or tours or B market stuff I'd been to up to that point
Yep.
was
Was yeah.
a
What
thousand.
dude,
Yeah,
and how like it opened with Paper Cut was so amazing. Like I so unexpected
I
and
know.
also just so cool like the way the lights came up like right on cue.
He
Yeah.
did it. I'm such a nerd about that band. He did the
Yeah.
screen like on Live in Texas because in Paper Cut, he would
Hmm.
accent he would accent the verses in the second verse that Mike.
Hmm.
with screams. He would it was specifically on the lines it was like I'm trying to remember exactly what it is. I know I've got a face and you pull out and then it's you. He like growls the you, and then
Mhm.
probably worse, and then stand and the lights. Every time Chester would scream in the verse, which is again not on the
Mhm.
recording, but every time he did, the lights would come on while he was doing that, and I was like, it
Yeah.
was. I mean, what he channeled was otherworldly.
Lyrics were pitch perfect, but then
Yeah,
also going above and beyond the recorded versions, like
him
un-
screaming the full
amazing.
length of the "Given Up" scream, and dude, his singing, just everything about Chester is the only, maybe next to like Spencer Chamberlain from Under Oath or Chino from Deftones.
Mhm.
Chester's like I think one of the only vocalists whose screaming felt elemental to me. It didn't feel the
Mhm.
novel. I never cared about the novelty of how brutal or heavy or like metal something sounded. I know a lot of people do, and that's fine. Like that's part of why they like how like evil or like edgy it sounds. Chester's screaming is like this. I mean, it's like you captured something elemental, like this force.
Yeah.
That's what it
Yeah.
always felt like to me. And seeing that, hearing it in the same room, like my body is hearing this, like experiencing the waves coming from his throat. And I
Mhm.
was like, dude, it was, I mean, I still have chills thinking about it. Like, I wish I could go
Yeah.
back and relive. If I could relive one concert ever, it would be that one. It's my
That's
number.
awesome, man. Well, I wasn't expecting that as your number one, actually.
Yeah,
So quick honorable mention time.
yeah.
That might be
That
in
might be
what I
where
was
the one.
thinking.
This was also in the era of Phillips Arena instead of State Farm, which is funny because the
Yeah.
next one after this will be during the State Farm Arena era. But
Yeah.
Radiohead, Phillips Arena,
Okay.
yeah.
That's
Uh,
what I was thinking.
I think it's because you weren't there and because Hunter was.
Yeah. Hunter ruined everything.
Hunter ruined it. No, I mean, dude, it
Yeah.
was. I finally got to see Radiohead. The only time I've gotten to see them, it was the King of Limbs tour, and I love that record. I like
Yeah.
for that. You got me that record for my birthday. It was my first, the first record in my vinyl collection.
Oh
Uh,
wow, yeah, that's right.
and, dude, those songs, like, dude, just them uh, doing Bloom and Morning Mr. Magpie to open, and
With
just
the two drummers.
yeah, because
Yeah.
Clive Deemer from Portishead was touring with them at the time, so they had so
Yeah.
like and like Colin was right in the middle of them. They do Bloom, Morning Mr. Magpie, and it's just so intense. Morning Mr. Magpie live is nothing like on the record.
Mhm.
It's so intense, and then they just stop it, and then and then Tom gets his guitar, and he switches out guitars, and he goes, "Well, we're called Radiohead," and the crowd's cheering before they get a chance to really do their full energy cheer. He starts playing Airbag immediately, and they all cheer. There's like that,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
Oh, dude, it was that Mixomatosis Live, Body Snatchers, Weird Fishes. They're there, dude. I
Hmm.
mean, literally every song I wanted.
Yeah.
Radiohead would probably have been in my top three if you were there, because no,
Yeah.
two of these of my top three, you were there for those.
Well, I'm honored, man. That's
I know
awesome.
I know
Yeah.
that someone's gonna kill me for putting Ed Sheeran and Coldplay over
No, no, I get it. Like, because
the.
Radiohead does make my top five as well, but they don't make my top three for similar reasons
Yeah,
of
and
yours.
it's just
So,
really what the other ones were. But yeah, no, Radiohead, the King
mhm,
of Limbs World Tour 2012. If you were there, you get it. Like,
mhm,
dude, oh, also the way they did Idiotech on that
mhm.
tour specifically with Clive and Phil,
Yeah.
you haven't seen that song until you've seen it with both of them. Like it's
Uh,
insane. I'm like I was just flabbergasted. And Hunter and
yeah.
I remember Hunter and I looking at each other. We were like, because we were in a band together at that point in time. I was in college, and he was like, and we looked at each other. We were just like, we should just give up, man.
Yeah.
Like, stop now. Uh,
That's great.
he took it to heart too seriously because he hasn't played music since.
Oh
Um,
my
uh,
God.
but
Yeah.
so then number two would be I can't remember if Blake was at this one or not. I feel like he would have mentioned it as his. The
Hmm.
1975 at State Farm Arena
Okay. Yeah.
on a world tour that was aptly named dot 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 at their very best.
Yeah.
What do I say about that that hasn't been said, man? At their very best by the 1975 was equal, and Matty Healy is, I'm quoting him directly from even an interview he just did in Doom Scroll. That show was equally a rock concert and a performance art piece. The first
Hmm.
half of it was this weird, almost Orwellian kind of like where they played through most of their newest record, being Funny in a Foreign Language, which perfect record, co-produced by Jack Antonoff, phenomenal front to back, 11 perfect songs with no interludes, just them recording in the same studio where D'Angelo made I can't remember which record it was, but one of the D'Angelo records was made there. And they just hold up in the after a band that had kind of gone through all these production and kind of like equally post-punk, equally pop, equally indie, equally drum and bass, kind of like doing all this different stuff. On the fifth record, they were like, let's just put on suits and ties. Let's only make a record, no frills. The only rule for this record is we're making a record with whatever instruments we have in this room. That's it. Like we just don't know, like just let's make a record, you know?
Yeah.
And man, dude, like they went through this whole thing, and then like Maddie literally like he like ate a piece of like fake meat that was a piece of cake, and he like took off his shirt and did like push-ups, and then like with like all these weird like far right wing extreme conservative people on this wall of televisions, he's like doing push-ups in front of it and eating fake meat, and then he like
Hmm.
crawls into a TV and disappears. Like it's
Yeah.
like, dude, it just the statements he was making, both in earnest and
Hmm.
also as a satirical piece of commentary on everything happening in the world. He does it
Right.
like the dude is a visionary. He is so smart and
Yeah.
so cool. And someone is probably going to make the Rick and Morty meme of me talking about Matty Healy. Don't care, because he is just that guy, man. And he's just a guy who just really just he just is really observing everything that everyone else is observing just through the lens of really, really good art. And
Yeah.
the songs were amazing. Then when they did the second set and they played through all their hits from all the four records before that one, man, dude, me and Ryan just we were just blown away. Like the multifaceted. They also altered their live band with the
Hmm.
four main dudes, but then there are four live players because they have a live saxophonist. They have their friend who plays guitar and keys. They have this girl, I forget her name. She's amazing. She plays acoustic, and then they have this other woman who plays. She's like just a percussionist. Has all these like world percussion, like world music instruments.
Hmm.
Dude, the way they pull off this eight-piece live band and their saxophone player, dude, it was like, oh man, it was. I mean, like perfect band. I got to see them again later last year at Music Midtown with them and Billie Eilish, and just blew the same thing away. It was just like, I mean, it was so cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, the At Their Very Best World Tour was, I would call, it's probably the most aptly named tour I've ever been to, because it was really them, like just the
Yeah.
most fully realized version of their band. There was literally even a point right before my favorite song, "It's Not Living If It's Not With You," from A Brief Inquiry, where Maddie usually will try to say something out of pocket. Like he'll say a joke and then they'll start the riff. He'll
Hmm.
literally just he'll say something along the lines of like he'll be like, I don't mean this to sound racist, but and then they'll do and go.
Yeah. Yeah.
Our show, he didn't even do that. He just chuckled and he was like, so many hits. We just keep getting better and better. And like and it,
Yeah.
I mean, dude, it was just such a ham, but it was like he was
Yeah.
like that's a dude who buys his own hype, and I'm all for it because I
Hmm.
I am so massively inspired by them. I have no interest in being in a band that sounds like them, but our band is massively inspired by the vision and the scale of what they do, and also
Right.
the
Yeah.
variety is third. It's every bit as more so than Coldplay, and every bit as much as Radiohead. They are that
Yeah.
band. It's
Yeah. Yeah. And
then my third and final honorable mention is man, these honorable mentions for this particular category are going as long as everyone else's regular ones.
yeah. Yeah.
It was, and I'd be remiss if I did not say this again. This
Hmm.
qualifier still applies to this, so it's
Right.
not Manchester Orchestra with you that first time. That one would be up there for me too, because that the Simple Math tour.
No doubt.
I have to keep it arena shows, otherwise I
Yeah.
could be here all night. Um, but it would be Kendrick Lamar, the Damn Tour.
Okay.
Infinite Energy Center, which is now called something. I think it's Gas South Arena, which is a
Hmm.
terrible. The Infinite Energy Center was way cooler.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
at Arena in Duluth in
Hmm.
2017. I went there with my cousin. Um, well, my like only cool cousin on my dad's
Hmm.
side. She's awesome and she loves good music. So, dude, Kendrick Lamar is one of. There's a reason he is who he is. There's a reason he's as successful as he is. That dude is a visionary, and he did one of the most impressive live shows I've ever seen by any artist
Yeah.
ever. Next to Ed Sheeran, like his live show, it was terrifying. Like there were parts of it where I mean, he was just channeling something otherworldly. Like he would disappear and reappear. But then there was also this film that was playing behind him that was almost like this fake 70s film called like The Adventures of Kung Fu Kenny. But then it would like he would like show up in the middle of the crowd after something be done playing, and he'd be like in a cage of lights, and he'd just be like looking like while he was rapping. Dude, him.
Yeah.
I mean, he literally did all of he did the intro of Blood into DNA from Damn, and during DNA he like fought a choreographed person who I'm pretty sure I read somewhere like it was like a ninja with a sword, like a katana blade, and I'm pretty sure I
Yeah.
read that like I just someone can fact check me on this. I'm pretty sure it was they choreographed it so that he would not ever get hurt, but that it was a real katana that he was
Yeah.
actually avoiding and dodging like while rapping, and
It's
like
insane.
it was like the
Yeah.
vision, man, and also those songs, that record. I when I briefly mentioned him earlier during Devil and God about like light and dark of humanity distilled into sound. Damn
Hmm.
by Kendrick Lamar, I would call the Devil and God are raging inside me of hip hop. I
Yeah.
really think that record, there is no other hip hop record like it. There's very few records like it at all. You can listen to it front to back and then back to front, and it's a different record if you do that.
Hmm.
Crazy. I mean,
Yeah.
but
I need to revisit that one, honestly.
oh, dude,
Oh.
it's so good. But that tour, if you had seen that, you would have been like,
Yeah.
whoa. Like it just like
Yeah.
whole other level of artistry, man. Hip hop shows are amazing. I
Yeah.
live I'm kind of like doing a full circle right now of like what got me
Hmm.
into music, but really like
Right. Right.
I've seen some of my favorite hip hop artists live, but Kendrick takes the cake. Like he
Yeah.
is the best, man. He just is. He is the
Yeah.
best. He's the best alive anyway. But yeah, man, like I had to narrow it down to the arena.
Yeah. No, dude, man, I totally get
Only
it.
way I
And
could get through this.
because yeah, now that like we had that conversation the other day and you were like, wait, you haven't even seen over 100 shows and you've probably like tripled that by this point already.
Why is that? Like it's like because it's like, and again, I'm considering like so many different kinds of shows, so that is the
Yeah.
technicality. But even if I made it like anything that's like a Ticketmaster sanction menu, even if it's small, like Purgatory or
Yeah.
Alter, like the Drunken Unicorn or like anything like that. Really,
Hmm.
I've been to like, I mean, at this point, it's half a grand. Like it's like just it's well, it's like over 500 for sure. It has
That's
like
that's insane.
I've just
But
been, I've
yeah.
just like there was like, I mean, I think you might remember because I was in college at the time. But when I had like when I was working my jobs at I was like 21. When I was working my double jobs while also being in college, where I was working at Toys R Us and Subway, I was like 21, right?
Yeah.
There was like and this has happened multiple times. This is why like you can fit that number in there. This has happened multiple times for me where I remember one week in October 2014, one of those was the time I saw Brand New for 7 days in a row. I was at shows. I saw
Yeah.
Brand New Thrice converge between The Buried and Me, The World Is a Beautiful Place, like all these different Foxing, I think, um,
Yeah.
all like in 7 days, and
Yeah. Yeah.
I was like, this is the best week of my life. I
That's
was like,
awesome,
and
man.
again,
Yeah.
that wasn't unique. I just always remember that one because I saw
Yeah.
like my four of my then top five
Yeah.
artists
Yeah.
same week, which was crazy.
Yeah.
That trend, especially in the fall touring season, that is a normal thing for me. Especially because I
Yeah.
just have at this point I have so many friends who like are in the touring world too. Who I like, I mean, just this week I was, going to see a band that I used to play with, that, when they're from LA, but when they would be here, we would play shows with them, and now they're huge and they were selling out Heaven. Shout out Silent Planet. But like I'm going to see friends who are on tour a lot of the time. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like
Right.
just
Oh yeah.
sheer number puts it at like this cap of like even the Tabernacle and Heaven shows. I mean, like I was just
Yeah.
at Buckhead Theater to see Andrew. Like, and so
Yeah. Yeah.
I can't include all of those at some point. And
Yeah.
plus, for me, the beginning of it being the Linkin Park show, the concert, like being like my first real arena show
Yeah.
inside an arena with you, that kind of like puts this special like category in its own place because that was the beginning of that for me. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah. Well, I have a feeling too, like this, even though, 500 plus shows, this is probably just the beginning in many ways. Certainly for a band called Love, man, you guys
I appreciate it.
are
I'm wearing our
already on an amazing trajectory. So be on the lookout for a lot of cool stuff in the near future going on. Of course, the big show December 7th,
Mhm.
at the Masquerade, but dude, I could talk to about music with you all day, as we've done many times.
Yeah,
But yeah, we probably need to wrap this up. But dude, I love you so much, man.
I love you, man. Thank you for
And
having me. It was a lot of fun. I
yeah,
really, really was nervous, but I had to sleep on this list, and then I was like, as soon as I got in here, I was like, oh, this is gonna be fun. You know what I
yeah.
mean? thought I would
Oh, of
like
course.
of a lot of mine, but I'm really stoked I got to talk about this, and I'm stoked I get
Yeah.
to like actually like look forward to only one more now, which is Ryan, because like I've loved listening to Brooks, Blake, and Austin. It's been a treat to like listen. Those are like my best friends, but like it's like
Yeah.
getting to hear their takes explained so in depth has been like such a treat for me, like getting to be their bandmate and whatnot. But dude, Ryan's like that dude's my musical soulmate as like a songwriter. Like so, I
Yeah.
mean, like I know what some of his are, but I mean, I don't know what all of them are. His list is actually on the studio computer, but I'm like trying to
Yeah.
not, I'm
Don't
trying to
look.
not look at
Yeah.
it. But but I know what like a couple things are, so I'm really looking forward to him talking to you about those things. It's gonna be so,
Yeah. Can't
you know.
wait, man. Yeah, that is coming up as you've been made well aware by this point. Yeah, all five A Band Called Love members are my first five episodes, and then we'll see where the top three show goes from there. But for now, yeah, it's just been a wonderful treat, man. So this was great, and I'll see you tomorrow.
Yeah, I'll see you at the house.
All right. Love
Love
you,
you.
man.
Thanks
See
for
ya.
coming. Bye.
All right, bye.